Hello and welcome to our Shaping the Future of Finance leadership series. Throughout, you'll watch many interviews from all of our guests that share the same thing in common. They've all navigated their journey to finance leadership in what is a very male-dominated position. At Ayla, we believe in a more sustainable, diverse and inclusive world of work, and we hope these interviews bring you inspiration and motivation to continue on your journey to finance leadership. So it gives me great pleasure to announce our guest today is Koula. Achillea?
Yeah, perfect.
That's amazing. Thank you for joining us, Koula. Really
Thanks
appreciate it.
Aidan.
So, introduction, getting into it. What brought you into the world of finance?
It's a bit of a funny story. I initially wanted to become an optician, but believe it or not, I failed maths A-level, which kind of, everyone always thinks you have to be amazing at maths A-level. There's loads of reasons why I failed it, but anyway, I loved business studies and I loved accounting, which was my other A-level. So I went on to do accounting at university and then straight into the wonderful world of finance. But it was really because I loved business and I grew up in an environment where my parents had a business and I wanted to be able to influence the business. So finance was just a really natural route for me. So I'm grateful that I failed A-level maths.
Absolutely. And it's still such a big thing that people just assume, right? That you should be good at maths and numbers if you're going to work in finance.
Yeah, you need to be good to a certain degree, to a certain extent, but not necessarily, you don't need to have an A in A-level maths.
Of course.
Yeah.
So talk me through your career. Where you started?
So after university, I joined Tesco for their graduate scheme, which was great, and learnt loads from being there. And I finished my exams really quickly, got loads of good grounding, being in such a large organisation, moved around different departments, which was great, fantastic, loved it. And then moved to Warner Leisure Hotels. So that was my first hospitality role, and I've been in hospitality ever since. And what I realised was I much prefer being in a smaller business where I can influence the business a lot more. So I spent a couple of years at Warner, then moved to Butlins. So Butlins was my first FD job, which was brilliant. Totally loved it, loved the brand, loved the business. And then had a few years at Butlins and then moved to Oakman Group. Again, I was like Oakman's #1 fan, so it was a dream come true being able to influence the business there. And I was at Oakman for about 3.5 years, so which was during COVID, but we'll probably touch on that later.
I remember talking to you when you first started at Oakman, and we were both saying, "Oh, we love that pub, we love this pub."
Yeah.
And genuinely, they've always been like a restaurant group and a pub that I've gone to, me and my wife. And talking to you about it, I was like, yeah, she's definitely committed here. It's like she wants to be part of the group.
I was always Oakman's #1 fan, and so all my family, well, I think half our disposable income used to go on Oakman Group.
Nice.
So yeah, I just took the job just for the discount, really.
100%, yeah, why not? I want to be their talent manager. So did it come natural to you to get into leadership roles, or did you always know that you wanted to pursue a leadership position?
I think it wasn't about like being a leader from a position power perspective. So I never kind of said I want to be an FD. It was more around I just want to be able to influence and make a difference and have an impact on things, and I want to feel like there is a consequence to my actions. And leadership for me isn't about, you don't have to have like a direct reports. It doesn't have to be position power. It's not that authoritarian thing. It's just about coaching and influencing and moving towards a common sense of purpose and a common goal together. So I always gravitated towards doing those things, and then eventually you get a team, and then your team grows, and then your responsibility gets bigger. So it was just a natural progression, really.
Okay, and everyone will be able to look you up on LinkedIn and they'll see the roles that you've had and the leadership positions you've had, and I'm sure everyone will agree that you've been in some really good, great leadership roles. But how have you navigated your journey within leadership in what is still a male-dominated industry? Not industry, but position.
Yeah, I guess I've been really fortunate, if I'm really honest with you, Aidan. I haven't really come across any adversity as a result of not being a man and being a woman. And I haven't, I am who I am. I'm just authentic, and this is me, and people know what I'm like, and they know what my leadership skills are like. And I've just been fortunate that I've worked alongside people that get me, and I fit in well with the culture of the business. The culture is really important. So I guess other people might have different stories about challenging times and adversity being a woman, but I've just been really fortunate, either that or totally blinded to it. And maybe actually being totally blinded to it, you do have to have a bit of a thick skin, and it's been fine.
Maybe you feel fortunate, but in reality, you've navigated choppy waters through being who you are, being authentic to yourself, and that actually being a natural leader, and having the confidence to maybe go for certain roles, or to challenge, or to naturally try to promote and progress yourself.
I think part of leadership is your team. So when I say I'm fortunate, I feel that it's not just about me. It's not the Koula show.
Yeah.
It's the team. You're working together as a team, whether that's your peers or the rest of the finance team. And I feel fortunate because I've had great teams and in great organisations. And that's what helps you navigate it. That's what helps you get through it all.
Okay. So what are your biggest challenges that you face then? Because there must have been some challenges along the way, right?
Definitely, loads of challenges. I mean, if we put COVID aside, because that we'll probably come to that later, I'd say coming back from maternity leave was the biggest challenge for me, and I didn't realise how tough it was going to be. I took a year off, I had twins, I loved my year off, and when I came back, I just put so much pressure on myself to hit the ground running and get on top of everything that I'd missed in a year, and it was ridiculous, the pressure that I put on myself. And I learned so much from that experience, and I learned a lot about myself, and since then I've made sure that all the team that I work with don't make the same mistake as me, and I've made sure that I've tried to support the team differently as well. And it is a big challenge, it's sometimes it's difficult enough when you have 2 or 3 weeks off on holiday and you go back to work. Imagine having a year off and all the changes that you've experienced during that time. So that was a huge challenge for me from all angles, personally, and professionally, and in my relationships with people as well.
Okay, amazing. I mean, such a big challenge clearly, and one that I think everyone in some way sees people experiencing it, but maybe not firsthand like I would as an example. So, and
there's more that we need to do to support women and men. Paternity leave is changing, which is great, and supports the couple, but I think there is a lot more that businesses and organisations need to do to understand that transition and how to best support that transition.
100%.
And everyone's different, and it's not necessarily about waving a magic wand. It's just about having the conversation and having some understanding that it's challenging when you return to work after having children.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the pandemic.
Yes.
Obviously, I can't have an interview with you and not mention the pandemic.
Yeah.
Partly,
what pandemic?
of course. Also, sort of, because you were FD of Open Inns, pub, hospitality group, having to close doors. So how did the pandemic impact?
I still get a little shudder every time you mention COVID. So I joined in the January 2020.
Yeah.
So I was blissfully in induction. I had planned to go to all the pubs that I hadn't already been to. I was working my way around all of the pubs, working my way down the menu, putting on the pounds, and then COVID hit, and it felt like the rug was swept from under our feet. It was so difficult, but what I learned was it was all about communication and culture, and what we had at Oakman, what I learned very early on was that Oakman had such strong communication, such a strong leadership team, such strong culture, that's what helps the business get through and navigate those choppy times. So the business was always focused on doing the right thing for the team, which I think a lot of other businesses weren't thinking about the team. And we had a lot of very early on conversations around what does this mean for our team, and how do we do the right thing for our team, and how do we keep our team engaged, and how do we make sure that our team aren't feeling stressed or anxious. And that for me, being new into business, made me realise it was everything that I thought Oakland was, but seeing it and the action that we took made me realise this is definitely the right business for me, and the right people and the right culture. So it was always around the team, and then at the same time trying to manoeuvre around the finances and cash flow, and what was the government going to do? Were they going to support us? Weren't they going to support us? Forecasting all the different scenarios, trying to get CBILS money in from the banks, which was really difficult and really challenging. And then also being prepared so that when we were able to open, we could hit the ground running and trade in the right way. And what I mean by trading the right way is, do you go full out hazmat suits, cordoned off all your areas, do temperature checks on everyone?
Yeah.
Or, what does your operation look like when you go back? And we got all of those things right. We really did. So when we were able to open our doors, we had the team, and the team felt confident, and they were engaged, and our guests came back and they trusted us, and we had the right measures in place so that you felt safe. But you know what? We're still in a pub.
Yeah.
We're still going to have a good time. There's not going to be hazmat suits and people taking the temperature check every 2 minutes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And getting that balance comes through experience and communication and listening to the team.
Absolutely.
The team have got the best answers, right?
100%. And I remember the CEO of Oakland Inns interviewing. It almost felt like daily.
Oh yeah.
Trying to talk about the right thing to do, how to come back from the pandemic, and it was amazing to see. And also in terms of the team and the culture, I can second that, because there are so many individuals that I spoke to early on in the pandemic in hospitality that were phoning me every day, non-stop, because they were losing their jobs, or they didn't feel like they were being looked after or supported, and there was just no support for them.
Yeah.
But I didn't get that from anyone at Oakland Inns.
Yeah.
And I would have done. So it's really testament to the culture that you had in the business, which is great.
I mean, it was a tough time, and
course.
It was relentless for a long time, because there was the aftermath then created, when Brexit created shortages in labour, which then impacted us, then followed by cost of living crisis and inflation and everything else. So
Of
it was,
course. No let up.
Yeah. Fun and games, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So what role we're moving on to mentors.
Yeah.
Have you had mentors in your career, and what role have they played?
So I've got one mentor, and she's amazing, and I've known her for many years now, maybe 15 years, and I'm blessed that she's in my life, because she knows me really well, and she's always been there to give me really good advice and ask me really difficult questions, those kind of those soul-searching questions.
Yeah.
And I trust her implicitly, and I think having a mentor is really important. And there's lots of mentors kind of come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and sometimes the word mentor can be interchanged with coach, but they're quite different things. But I think it's really important for everybody to have someone, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a coach, whether it's a sounding board, whether it's a sponsor, whatever you want to call it, someone who is a bit more impartial, who's got your back but isn't blindsided by you, so they can challenge you. And I love, I try and provide coaching and support and guidance to whoever, whether it's my team or other women, put me in touch with other women. I'm not qualified, but I'm always offer help and support to other women.
I would say you are qualified, right? In terms of a mentor, a sponsor, a sounding board. You've got a great career. You've had some really good roles for some really good businesses. Why shouldn't that be seen as qualified? You don't need to be a qualified coach.
I
think you're right. It's a mentor. It's a sounding board, and I think everyone should have one. I agree with that, and I'm glad that you have had one.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to people looking to progress in finance and reach those leadership roles? What advice do you think kind of stands out for you?
I think it's about being true to yourself, so being authentic, knowing what your superpower is, knowing what you bring to the table, what you bring to the party, where your strengths are. And I think it's really important to know that, because that's your USP. But also when the chips are down and things are tough, being able to hold on to that helps you get through that as well. You don't have to fit a mould. I think people come in all different shapes and sizes, and there's enough to bring to the party. You don't have to feel that you have to look a certain way or act a certain way or talk a certain way. You just need to be you, and hopefully you'll find a business that loves you and welcomes you. I think it's really important in finance to have empathy and to listen and understand, because a big part of the role is bringing the numbers to life and offering strategic advice and guidance and decision-making support. And if you want to do that really well, you need to understand what's going on. And the only way you're going to understand what's going on is to get to ground roots and listen. And listen, I think my husband always says, you've got one mouth and 2 ears, and there's a reason why it's in that proportion. Because if you listen and you understand, then it's easier to advocate solutions, and that's a big part of being in finance.
Absolutely, especially in a leadership role, right? When you have to make decisions, add value, support a team. As you said earlier, it's about the team, not you.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, amazing. So, what would you say as advice to, or not advice, but what would you say to people starting their career that that you wish you knew then?
Good question. What do I wish I knew? I think a couple of things. So one is, finance is really broad. There's so many different areas you can go into, and so many different roles, large businesses, small businesses. And I think just because you might have had one bad experience in one department, in one business, doesn't mean that finance isn't right for you. And I think, so that's kind of a bit of a broad...
But that's good. So keep an open mind. If you thought you wanted to be in finance, just because you have one role, one experience that wasn't perfect, it doesn't mean that...
There's so many different
100%.
parts of finance, and sometimes those different roles in finance suit different individuals.
Yeah.
So whether you're very analytical and data driven, or the other extreme, there's a role for all different personality types, and that will suit your natural skill sets. And probably the other bit of advice, which is really personal to me, is around setting boundaries.
Okay.
And I think it's something that I've struggled with, and I need to get better at doing, but setting clear boundaries. I think it's really easy just to say yes to everyone and everything because you want to help and you don't want to let people down, but having clear boundaries on what's right for you as an individual, I think helps with your longevity and protecting yourself and your mental health and physical health as well.
I understand that, and I can agree with that massively. And you think when you become a leader in finance, you remember that when you were in that team, you had boundaries, you had the confidence to say no when things were too tough, or you're working 70-hour weeks, and actually you then remember that as a leader of your team, and you don't want to put that on them.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, absolutely. And I think it's important for people to understand their boundaries and set them and be clear about them and not feel guilty. And
Absolutely.
Everybody needs a holiday and time out, and those things don't change, they just become even more important.
Of course. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Aidan.
Cheers,
Cheers,
Koula.
thanks.
Thank you for watching. This has been one of our interviews for our Shaping the Future of Finance leadership series. You can find more on our YouTube channel and keep an eye on our LinkedIn page for more. And I hope they bring you inspiration and motivation to continue on your journey to finance leadership.